welcome back. And another short story from a series of them by Damon Runyon and his novel On Broadway. And it was the basis of a lot of these stories for the hit musical Guys and Dolls. Now this one's called Hold'em Yale. Here we go. What am I doing in New Haven on the day of a very large football game between the Harvards and the Yales is something which calls for quite a little explanation, because I am not such a guy as you will expect to find in New Haven at any time, and especially on the day of a large football game. But there I am, and the reason I am there goes back to a Friday night when I'm sitting in Mindy's restaurant on Broadway, thinking of a very little except how I can get hold of a few potatoes to take care of the old overhead. And while I'm sitting there, who comes in but Samdeganov, who is a ticket speculator by trade and who seems to be looking all around and about. Well, Samdeganov gets to talking to me, and it turns out that he's looking for a guy by the name of Gigolo Georgie, who is called Gigolo Georgie because he is always hanging around nightclubs wearing a little mustache, white spats, and dancing with old dolls. In fact, Gigolo Georgie is nothing but a gentleman bum, and I'm surprised that Samdeganov is looking for him. But it seems that the reason Samdeganov wishes to find Gigolo Georgie is to give him a good punch on the snoot, because it seems that Gigolo Georgie promotes Sam for several ducats to the large football game between the Harvards and the Yales to sell on commission, and never kicks back anything whatever to Sam. Naturally, Sam considers Gigolo Georgie nothing but a rascal for doing such a thing to him, and Sam says he will find Gigolo Georgie and give him a going over if it is the last act of his life. Well then, Sam explains to me that he has quite a few nice ducats for the large football game between the Harvards and the Yales, and he's taking a crew of guys with him to New Haven the next day to hustle these ducats. And what about me going along and helping to hustle these ducats and making a few bobs for myself, which is an invitation that sounds very pleasant to me indeed. Now, of course, it's very difficult for anybody to get nice ducats to a large football game between the Harvards and the Yales, unless they are personally college guys, and Samdeganov is by no means a college guy. In fact, the nearest Sam ever comes to a college is when he is passing through the yard belonging to the Princetons, but Sam is on the fly at the time as a gendarme is after him, and he does not really see much of the college. But every college guy is entitled to ducats to a large football game with which his college is connected, and it's really surprising how many college guys do not care to see large football games even after they get their ducats, especially if a ticket spec such as Samdeganov comes along offering them a few bobs more than the ducats are worth. I suppose this is because a college guy figures he can see a large football game when he is old, while many things are taking place around and about that is necessary for him to see while he is young enough to really enjoy them, such as the Follies. Anyway, many college guys are always willing to listen to reason when Samdeganov comes around offering to buy their ducats, and then Sam takes these ducats and sells them to customers for maybe 10 times the price of the ducats called for. And in this way, Sam does very good for himself. Now, I know Samdeganov for maybe 20 years, and always he is speculating in ducats of one kind and another. Sometimes it is ducats for the World Series, sometimes for big fights, and sometimes it is ducats for nothing but lawn tennis games. Although why anybody wishes to see such a thing as lawn tennis is always a very great mystery to Samdeganov and everybody else. But in all those years, I see Sam dodging around under the feet of the crowds at these large events, or running through the special trains offering to buy or sell ducats. I never hear of Sam personally attending any of these events, except maybe a baseball game or a fight, for Sam has practically no interest in anything but a little profit on his ducats. He's a short, chunky, black-looking guy with a big beezer, and he always sweating even on a cold day, and he comes from down round Essex Street on the Lower East Side. Moreover, Samdeganov's crew generally come from the Lower East Side too, For as Sam goes along, he makes plenty of potatoes for himself and branches out quite some and has a lot of assistants hustling ducats around these different events. When Sam is younger, the cops consider him hard to get along with, and in fact his moniker, the Ganov, comes from his young days down on the Lower East Side, and I hear it is Yiddish for thief. But of course Sam gets older and starts gathering plenty of potatoes. He would not think of stealing anything. At least, not much. Especially if it is anything that is nailed down. Well, anyway, I see samdeganov and his crew at the information desk at Grand Central the next morning, and this is how I come to be in New Haven on the day of the large football game between the Harvards and the Yales. For such a game as this, Sam has all his best hustlers, including such as Jew Louie, Nubsy Taylor, Benny Southstreet, and Old Liverlips. And to look at these parties, you will never suspect that they are top-notch ducat hustlers. The best you will figure them is a lot of guys who are not to be met up with in a dark alley. But then ducat hustling is a rough and tumble dodge, and it will scarcely be a good policy to hire female impersonators. Now, while we are hustling these ducats out around the main gates of the Yale Bowl, I notice a very beautiful little doll of maybe 16 or 17 standing around watching the crowd, and I can see she is waiting for somebody, as many dolls often do at football games. But I can also see that this little doll is very much worried as the crowd keeps going in and it is getting on towards the game time. In fact, by and by, I can see this little doll has tears in her eyes, and if there's anything I hate to see, it's his tears in a doll's eyes. So finally, I goes over to her and I say as follows. What is eating you, little miss? Oh, she says, I'm waiting for Elliot. He is coming up from New York and meet me here to take me to the game, but he's not yet here, and I'm afraid something happens to him. Furthermore, she says, tears in her eyes getting very large indeed, I'm afraid I'll miss the game because he has my ticket. Why, I say, this is a very simple proposition. I will sell you a choice ducat for only a sawbuck, which is $10 in your language. And you are getting such a bargain only because the game is about to begin and the market is going down. But I do not have $10. In fact, I've only 50 cents left in my purse, and this is worrying me very much, for what will I do if Elliot does not meet me? You see, I come from Miss Peavy's school in Worcester, and I only have enough monies to get my railroad fare here. And of course I cannot ask Miss Peavy for any monies, as I do not wish her to know I'm going away. Well, naturally, all this is commencing to sound to me like a hard luck story, such as any doll is apt to tell. So I go on about my business because I figure she will next be trying to pull the lug on me for a ducat, or maybe for her railroad fare back to Worcester. Although, generally dolls with hard luck stories live in San Francisco. She keeps on standing there, and I notice she is now crying more than somewhat, and I get to thinking to myself that she is about as cute a little doll as I ever see, although too young for anybody to be bothering much about. Furthermore, I get to thinking that maybe she is on the level, and that with her story. Well, by this time, the crowd is nearly all in the bowl, and only a few parties, such as coppers and hustlers of one kind and another, are left standing outside, and there is much cheering going on inside when samdeganov comes up looking very much disgusted and speaks as follows. Well, we see what samdeganov has to say tomorrow. Until then, stay safe, be good. My soul be kind, won't you? God bless. Bye-bye.